So Drug Informations and Alert Aotearoa New Zealand, also known as DIANS, is the official name of our Drug Early Warning System group. But we operate publicly as High Alert, and that's what everyone knows us as because it's much less of a mouthful. So the system went live in June 2020 and was established in response by a mandate of the New Zealand National Drug Policy, with the aim of coordinating responses to drug harm. So prior to the establishment of High Alert, there hadn't been any process for government agencies and NGOs to work together in responses to acute harm in the community. And this was particularly evident in response to the synthetic cannabinoid crisis in 2017 and 2018 that we experienced in New Zealand, when we had a significant amount of harm and a large number of deaths in response to synthetic cannabinoids. So our mission is to reduce harm in the New Zealand community by pulling together evidence and the understandings of outbreaks of harm, and in some cases anticipating potential harm uses. And when we identify risks, we release warnings to ensure people have the information to use drugs safer. So our whole work is based on the understanding that people will use drugs no matter what happens. They're going to use drugs no matter how much you say drugs aren't safe. So we want to make sure that they have the best information possible, that when they do use them, that they can be as safe as possible. So High Alert is a Ministry of Health initiative. They pay our bills, they keep our lights on, but we're housed within the National Drug Intelligence Bureau, which is a joint agency group between New Zealand Police, New Zealand Customs Service, the Ministry of Health, and Health New Zealand. And it's this joint agency group that is a real strength for High Alert, based on the sources that we bring together and the understanding and knowledge that our team has. And our team is quite small. There are 4 of us, so this is 50% of High Alert in the wrong country right now. So there are 3 analysts, myself and Cam and Finn, who didn't get to come with us on this trip, and our online channels manager, Jen, who keeps us all ticking over. And it's this dedicated group, and it's our whole purpose, our whole J job is early warning system. But it is important to note that we're supported by a network of professionals and social services groups, and we couldn't do the work we do without them. So during today's presentation, we're going to go through how we operate as an early warning system, and at the end, look at some of what we think have been our strengths over the last 4 years since we were established, and also some of the lessons that we've learned. And we're hopeful that you will learn something that might support the harm reduction work that you guys are doing here in Australia. So obviously our most visible work that we do are the outputs that we produce. As a team, we do a number of different types of information releases, most noticeable being our notifications and alerts. These are when we identify particularly harmful substances in the community, and we get that information there. And Cam's going to talk in more detail about that process for us a little bit later. But we also have other forms of reporting that we do when we identify risks of harm that might not be as severe, but is still important for the community to know about. And in this instance, we use our website, and we release articles on our website, and we also use our social media channels to get information out there to the people using, so that they can make the best choices that they can. In addition to this, we also do semi-regular trend reporting for our professional network, and these contain insights on different things that might be happening in the drug environment, just to keep everyone up to an understanding of what's new, what's weird, but also what's normal, because you can't know what's weird if you don't know what's normal. And this helps these professional network to support their patients and clients in their communities. And we also do more formal reports on the drug environment. We are based in an intelligence unit, and so strategic insights are what is something that we do a lot of in our wider team. And I'll talk a little bit about a few of the ones of these later. Oh, info sources. There's one more slide. Okay. The most critical part of what we do every day as our drug warning system is our scanning. Without this, we can't produce the products and outputs that we produce. So we monitor a huge range of information sources to identify harm that's occurred or where it might possibly occur. Our understanding of the drug environment is based on the collective inputs of a large number of information sources. These are just some of them. And these all contribute to providing a piece of the puzzle, although some are a little bit more valuable than others. So the frequency which we monitor these sources varies. Some of them we monitor every single day. Others we check in on every now and again. And through doing this, it gives us a good coverage of the entire drug market. Though there are a few gaps that we're looking to address when it comes to our ability to see the whole picture. So there are various strengths and weaknesses of all data sources, as we've already discussed today a lot. But particularly when it comes to key risks, we are looking for particularly potent drugs, novel drugs, misrepresentation of other substances, and adulteration. So the 3 data sources that we monitor every single day in New Zealand include sudden death reports to New Zealand Police. So if there's any death that isn't signed off by a medical provider that go to our coroner, it is the responsibility of the New Zealand Police to investigate these and produce reports. So we get these reports every day. It's a requirement that they're submitted by the end of a police shift. So they're all there for us the next morning. And this gives us an insight to what's happened in these situations, and especially because of our understanding of the drug environment, it gives a nuance that the police officers and attendants might not know. We might know that those funny little yellow pills that have been floating around in the community might not actually just be some drug, but might be that nitazine. And so it gives us that insight, and we can pull these together. In addition to this, we also monitor all the police jobs from the last 24 hours that have been drug related. We get these as a set of key terms related to drugs. These include live events from emergency and non-emergency calls made to police, events entered by police officers when they attend these events, and also reports that are not initiated through members of the public. And then the third of our daily monitored sources are drug-related events attended by ambulance services. So we also receive these based on a number of key drug terms, and this gives us an oversight of harm not seen by police. So that gives us the picture of what's happened in the last 24 hours in the drug environment related to drug harm. The other data source that is essential for the work we do is the data we receive from our drug checking services. So we do get to stand up here and boast that New Zealand has legal drug checking. There are 3 licensed drug checkers that support our public work, and it is a legal requirement under their legislation that they provide us the data from every clinic that they test. So we get the samples, what they came as presumed, and then what was actually result. And we work with them in a number of ways, including getting results sent off to big labs to make sure that the equipment that the drug checkers have is producing results. And this is an invaluable data source. But on top of these, we also have oversight of a number of other sources. So from our connections through the NDIB, we receive customs data. So we see every drug seizure at the border every month. We also monitor online sources like dark web marketplaces and ClearNet NPS websites. And specifically, we're looking for novel substances or potentially dangerous substances that might be in the domestic market that we haven't normally seen. We do receive information based on hospital admissions, but the New Zealand system for this is significantly delayed. We don't have any kind of live information to this. So it produces limited value for the early warning system and the rapid response we're trying to produce. And then on top of that, we're staying on top of drug forums. And another valuable thing about being housed in New Zealand Police is we get international reporting from all over the world coming into our inbox every day. So we try to stay on top of that as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Lucy. So as mentioned, notifications and alerts are our key output, but we do kind of like to show everything that we do because a lot of what we do is behind the scenes. So kind of think of it like an iceberg. So our public outputs are the tip of the iceberg, and then we kind of have everything else that feeds into that. So the next couple of slides will go through our notifications and then the process we go through when releasing them. So a notification is issued when we identify, or when information is identified that might indicate a risk of harm to the wider community. So since High Alert's launch in June 2022, we have issued 31 notifications. So you'll see that slide up there, that's wrong. I swear this happens every time I do this presentation. We submit the slides and then a couple of days later we end up putting out a notification. To be honest, I don't think I've ever had that slide right when presenting on it. So yes, 31 notifications, and these have been nationwide and related to many different classes of drugs. So how do we decide when there is a wider risk of harm? Well, should something of concern be identified during the scanning process, analysts begin to dig deeper into the matter. So analysts will engage with relevant parties seeking further information and context. So we often have questions around what was the drug sold as or presumed to be, how prevalent is this particular substance, did other people consume it, did they experience similar effects, where did they purchase it from, was it sold by a dealer or was it sold online? So this is all about just building a picture and just trying to gather as much information as possible to inform our analysis. So ideally, when a harm event occurs or if a potent or dangerous substance is presented to drug checking, a sample of the drug or a toxicology sample is sent away for analysis. So we work quite closely with the ESR. So this is a New Zealand government research agency that provides drug chemistry and toxicology analysis. So essentially, it's our national science lab. So laboratory analysis is the gold standard for High Alert in our notifications. So this scientific rigor gives our notifications credibility. So it's not just a gut feeling, but it also allows us to provide quite detailed harm reduction advice. It also removes the ability for people to kind of discredit or disregard what we're saying. So take, for example, 4 people at a festival experiencing adverse effects after consuming MDMA. So some people may simply think they drank too much or didn't know what they were doing. But if we can point to something concrete, we can say, no, this is why these people experienced harm and this is why people need to take notice. So once we have developed an understanding of the issue and gathered as much information as possible, we use a standardized risk assessment. So that's the risk assessment up there to assess the wider risk of community harm. So in the most basic sense, it measures the risk of harm. So what would happen if someone consumed the substance versus the prevalence. So what is the likelihood other people have the substance? So if it meets a certain threshold, which is typically around a score of 16, we'll consider releasing a notification or alert. So it's important to note that the matrix is not binding. So we kind of use it as a guide to inform our next set of actions. For the most part, if the threshold is met, we will release a notification. However, there may be some instances where the threshold is met, yet we don't release a notification, and conversely, it isn't met, and we do consider releasing one. So in some instances, a notification may not be the most appropriate medium to disseminate the information, and in other instances, there may be wider factors outside of harm and prevalence that we need to take into consideration. So I think over the summer, we have a number of festivals. So there's going to be a larger number of people consuming MDMA, many of which may have little to no experience consuming MDMA. So I'll quickly run through a quick example of a notification. So I selected a notification that came from a drug checking sample, just to show kind of how we work with our drug checking providers to identify substances of concern and get warnings out there. So drug checking is one of our best sources of information to identify dangerous substances in the community. So about 50% of our notifications have come on the back of drug checking samples. So this pill here was presented to a drug checking clinic in Wellington in March 2022. So based on our understanding of the drug market, we knew that these pills weren't prescribed in New Zealand and that they were also a common format for counterfeit tablets overseas, which often contain fentanyl. According to the client that presented the tablet to the clinic, there was a reasonably large number of tablets in circulation. So kind of straight away, we had alarm bells going off. So the tablet was sent to ESR for analysis, and it was found to contain N-pyridinoetonidazine, which is a potent synthetic opioid. So by some estimates, it's 20 times stronger than fentanyl. So the concern here was that these tablets were being misrepresented as oxycodone, and contained a far more potent opioid than people who consume oxycodone may be accustomed to. The other concern here is that these tablets, when pressed, there's no quality control, so the tablets can vary in strength, even within the same batch. So getting word out is only kind of one part of our notifications. We also include harm reduction information to help people stay safe. So this could include advice like don't use alongside other drugs, start off with a small dose, or don't use alone. That final piece of advice around not using alone, it's so important. So I've seen it a number of times now where people are alive today because there was someone there that could call for help when they ran into trouble. So although this is a bit of an older case study, I do like speaking to it because we received some quite positive public engagement following its release. So as you can hopefully see on the slide, we have a few comments there from members of the public. So for the most part, it helped explain why these people would experience some quite adverse effects. But what's really encouraging to see is that people took action following our notification. So you can see in that second comment down that one individual actually flushed away their remaining tablets following our notification. And it's really cool to see that we have built enough of a reputation and are seen as credible enough that people are willing to take action based on our notifications. And it's really the position you want to be in as an early warning system.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other work we do. One of our big things and the thing that we're building up to at the moment is what is known as our summer response. So the summer festival season is obviously a time of year when there's elevated risk from drug harm. This is influenced by a number of factors, including increased drug use in these environments and often an increased number of people who are inexperienced at using drugs. And in New Zealand, from the 27th of December to the 4th of January, there are at least 10 music festivals, many crossing multiple days across the country. So if there is an incidence of severe misrepresentation or adulteration or a highly potent substance does turn up in the market, it's essential that we have a plan in place to get information out into these events as quickly as possible so that we can keep people safe. So the summer response was established after the summer of 2020 and 2021. During this time, there had a significant misrepresentation of MDMA in the New Zealand market. Drug checkers reported that over 50% of the MDMA wasn't as presumed. Most of it instead was the synthetic cathinone eudalone. And this resulted in a huge number of people experiencing unexpected effects and resulted in increased harm, including deaths. So summer response is made up of a lot of parts. As it was flagged earlier, we do some foresight looking. So with our summer outlook reporting, in the lead up to the summer, we released 3 reports in October, November, and December. And these reports provide an assessment of the current drug environment. And we use it to make predictions about what we expect to see over the summer. So this is distributed to our professional network and event organizers so that they can prepare for situations and have plans in place if harm might occur. So the second bit, and the bit that makes our life so happy, is our high alert on-call function. So we work through the summer period. Every day for that entire period, we have an analyst either working or on call for 24 hours a day, which is, and the point and purpose of this is a standard closed down period. Offices are normally closed. You normally can't contact anyone. You don't know who to get in touch with. So the answer is you call us. And we continue to monitor all of our regular sources over this time in order to feed into what is the other part of our summer response, is our acute drug harm summer response group. So this group is made up of us as well as representatives of our drug checking providers, representatives from the drug forensic and toxicology labs at the ESR, event medical providers, and Health New Zealand. And we come together every day and we jump on a call from all across the country and we discuss what we've seen, what we think we might be seeing, and any trends or things of concern. And this coordinated approach is what allows us to be prepared to respond in any situation that may arise. So far, we've had pretty good summers, but you never know, and we always need to be prepared for another example of that Utalone summer from 2020. So we talked a lot about reaching people today, and we do it in a lot of ways. So we're just going to kind of cover off our big main ones. So our public-facing website launched in June 2020. That's when we got named High Alert. And this website contains all of our notifications. You can jump on there and see all 31 of them. But we also include articles about low-risk trends and just articles about general harm reduction information. We also have a anecdotal reporting platform. It's particularly focused at people who use drugs to report anonymous bad experiences that they have. And also, our website's the place you can sign up for our mailing list. In addition to that, we also have all of the social media, which is the value of our online channels manager, and she's amazing. And we primarily use these to drive traffic to our website. So all of our social media posts have links to our articles or notifications to get people back to the information. But it also does have information on those, and it also allows for our different partners with the opportunity to reshare this information on their platforms. And thirdly, one of our most valuable resources are our mailing lists. So we have a public and a professional mailing list. Professional definition is kind of healthcare providers, people who work in the space. Our public list is only used to distribute notifications. If you're on our public list and you receive an email from us, it's probably worth paying attention to. Our professional list, however, receives not only our notifications, but our trend reports that we talked about earlier, and our other reporting like our summer Outlook products. And through a lot of hard work, we've been pretty successful in what we've managed to do in the last 4 years. There's some statistics on the board that I won't go through in too many, but we're particularly proud of the fact that we've had over almost 1.5 million people visit the High Alert website. We have over 8,000 members on our mailing list. So every time a notification goes out, it's going far and wide. And we're getting good, even though we don't prioritize our social media, we've still reached almost 2.5 million users. However, we're always working to grow and share what we do because we're trying to get the harm reduction message as far as we can.
Sweet. So we just want to wrap things up by discussing a couple of things we think we do really well, a few things that we're looking to improve on, and finally just go through some lessons learned. So a few things we've picked up in our 4 and a bit years of operating. So hopefully from this you can pick up a couple of things and take away and implement in your own areas of work. So in terms of strengths, one of our biggest is our relationship with law enforcement agencies. It's kind of funny to say. We are, unique in the fact that 2 of our 4 agencies are law enforcement agencies. So that's police and customs. And although we very much take a harm reduction approach, we do have the support of these agencies. And I think they're quite mature in the fact that, they've come to realise that we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem or seize our way out of this problem, and that there are tangible steps we can take to reduce harm. Which is kind of outside of a law enforcement lens. So the contributions from law enforcement agencies provide some of our most useful intelligence. So through police, we have access to information related to drug-related deaths, harm incidents they attend, the wider drug seizures from the community, and insights into what our organised criminal groups are doing. Customs provides an opportunity to identify harmful substances at the border before they enter the community. So there's a huge amount of value we can extract from custom seizures, as it does inform the wider drug market, and we can identify those macro level trends and understand how the market is changing. So another thing we do quite well is working collaboratively with our drug checking providers. So as Lucy mentioned, we have 3 public drug checking providers in New Zealand. And although the drug checking legislation does require them to provide information through to us, our relationship really does go beyond that. With legislation like this, information sharing can become very transactional, but that's not how we treat that relationship. We really couldn't do what we do without the buy-in and support from our drug checking providers. The information that they can gather from clients really helps inform our risk assessments. Drug checkers are the ones talking to clients, so they can provide that on-the-ground insight that we're not really picking up anywhere else. The samples that are presented to drug checking can also provide us an opportunity to identify dangerous substances circulating in the market before people actually consume them. So obviously that's preventative work, and that's kind of the space we really want to be operating in as an early warning system. We don't want to be responding to harm, but obviously there is a time and place for that. So the last thing I want to mention with respect to strengths is our ability to have oversight of the domestic drug market. So this is really a product of our extensive and comprehensive information sources, but it also helps that we are a dedicated team. So looking at the drug market is our one and only job, and the New Zealand market is very small, so that does help as well. So when we're monitoring the environment, we work on this idea of border to grave. So we want to understand what's happening at the border or kind of beyond the border to understand how this will impact the market through to what's happening to people who sadly pass away from drug consumption and kind of everything in between. So is this level of understanding required for every early warning system? Probably not, but it does help having it. Having a broad understanding of the market allows us to anticipate how the market will change, and we can then share these insights with the people it's going to affect. So for example, with respect to cocaine in New Zealand, so New Zealand traditionally hasn't had a huge cocaine market, but in the last year or so, we've seen consumption trending upwards, and this is expected to continue. So early on in the piece, we were able to inform drug treatment providers that they could see an influx in clients presenting with problematic cocaine use. And so this allowed them to kind of preemptively start thinking about best lines of treatment or how they were going to approach this. I guess from a high alert perspective, we were able to start thinking about possible acute drug harm risks that could stem from a growing cocaine market. So think the likes of dangerous adulterants. We could then start circulating this messaging and socializing people to these risks before they actually present in the community. So I've covered a few things that we think we do quite well, but we're always striving for perfection, and there are a few areas that we're looking to develop. So the big one for us is developing connections into the health system, so particularly at the emergency department level. I think this is something you guys do really well here, and this is one of our big things we want to improve on. So as Lucy mentioned, we do receive hospitalisation data, but it is very delayed. So it's not great from an early warning system perspective. When we do receive information from EDs, it's often very ad hoc. So we do have relationships with doctors around the country, but this is no way comprehensive. So ideally, we'd like to come to some sort of information sharing agreement, similar to what we have with ambulance providers. Or at least at a minimum, get our name out to EDs so that doctors know who to call when they are seeing atypical acute drug harm. So we do appreciate that people in EDs are very busy, and what we do may not necessarily help them with that patient at time, but we kind of pitch it at that preventative angle. So we're trying to stop other people ending up in EDs, so reducing workload that way. The other thing that we're looking to develop is some sort of formal toxicology monitoring program. That would also be in EDs. So this is something that was piloted in Wellington in 2018. So you'll see up on the screen we have the use program, so unknown substances in emergency departments. So in the most basic sense, anyone presenting to EDs with drug intoxication would have toxicology samples tested and sent for analysis. So obviously this would provide great oversight of the drug market, but also what's sending people to hospital. So alongside developing our connections with the health system, we also want to continue growing our relationships with people working in the drug harm sector. So a lot of our current information sources are government agencies, and we also have a few key NGOs. So these are often a step removed. So we really want to build those relationships with people that can gather the on the ground in the weed insights. So I think drug treatment providers, or people that are engaging directly with those affected. So this will really help us hear about incidents that we may not necessarily hear from other sources. So I think kind of low-level harm where people haven't engaged with services. So that's really going under the radar for us. So again, maybe making an effort of just getting our name out there, but it's also understanding what these groups want, so we can kind of adapt our outputs to support what they're doing. So a bit of give and take. So finally, sorry, I skipped ahead. Along the same vein, we want to continue to build public awareness. So really just getting our name out there so people recognise our brand, know what we do, also know that they can reach out to us. So although we do have a public submission portal, in all honesty, its uptake is low relative to the drug harm that is occurring in New Zealand. So it is something we want to try build. We see a slight uptick following a notification, but that does die off again. So it was really cool to see Vicky's presentation with what they've done with anecdotal reporting, and I think we'll definitely take a few notes, and I'll be following up with her maybe in the new year. So in terms of lessons learned, we've been operating for 4 and a bit years now, and there are a few things that we've picked up along the journey. So first thing I want to talk about is what we do as a team effort. It's an early warning system for a reason, so the system part of that is very important. The information we put out is only as good as the information we receive. So it's quite important to build those networks and information sources. It's important to know we can't be everywhere at once, so putting the time in to develop those sources will pay off later. And it's not just about the information that we put out. We can also lean on others to amplify our information that's going out. You don't just want to throw it out into the void. So if there are a few key nodes that you can build relationships with, they can get the information to the right people. In this line of work, you also need to be willing to adjust. So one size does not fit all. So if your approach is overly prescriptive, you will be exposed quite quickly. The drug environment and the drug harm environment is very fluid. So you need to ensure that you remain agile and willing to make changes so that your outputs remain fit for purpose and support those that it needs to. So this was something we found quite difficult initially. So when the business case was being put forward for high alert, so our processes and our scope being designed, it was being designed with by people that didn't have drug knowledge. So it wasn't until we got on the ground and started doing our thing that we realised that we were going to have to start tinkering with different bits and pieces. So that matrix I showed before, that was actually, well, it's not our original matrix. So the first one we had, it was quite prescriptive and didn't quite capture the fluidity and the nuance of the market. I guess another example is the summer response. So that was never envisioned when High Alert was stood up, but we kind of recognised that there was a gap and quite a significant risk. So we went about addressing that. So we've really helped support our partners, our drug checking providers that are doing some awesome work over that time. So as an early warning system, we also want to be mindful about oversaturating the audience with our messaging. So this is really with respect to notifications, alerts, warnings, whatever you call them. if we put something out, we really want people to listen to it. If we're putting too much information out there, we do risk, it becoming white noise and people may not pay attention when we really need them to. So it's a bit of a balancing act. So it's not to say that we want people to sit on information. I'm very much of the opinion that we need to get the information out there. But it's just considering whether there are other mediums that could be used to get the information out there that's not an alert. And kind of along the same vein, when releasing information to the public or your audience, you want to consider different mediums for this messaging. So not everyone's going to consume information in the same way. So some people may prefer an email, other social media, some may even prefer hard copies. So this is something we recently started doing. We had some feedback from our partners that they were printing off our notifications, and they weren't really designed to be printed off. So we started making one-page notifications that could be printed off, so you can post them on a wall or print them off on a pile and leave them at reception. So I think the key here is just be clever with it. Listen to your audience. Don't just throw information out there, but if you can maximise your cut through, take those steps to do that. So that's our presentation. Thanks for listening. I hope you picked up something from that. I think we have time for questions now. If not, like Lucy said, we'll be floating around. More than happy to talk about this stuff. So yeah, pull us aside.